I told him to not control me when he asked to spend time together instead of me partying, but then, hey Reddit, it's my first time posting. I never thought I'd be one to air my dirty laundry online, but here I am. I need to get this off my chest, and maybe some of you can relate. Let me start by saying I've always been a strong advocate for feminism. I believe in women's rights and equality, but I also believe in living my life on my terms. My husband Eric has always been supportive. At least that's what I thought until recently. My name is Anna and my husband's name is Eric. I am 26 and Eric is 27. Eric and I have been married for 5 years now. We met in college and clicked instantly. He's always been the steady, supportive type, while I've been the one pushing boundaries. Things have always been amazing for us, at least in the beginning. Eric understood me totally. He supported me, he was amazing and romantic, and I just thought things between us were great. Things between us were like a well-oiled machine, you know? We had this agreement from the get-go. I'd take care of the home front, and he'd handle all the bills and work stuff. It was a deal we made before tying the knot, and honestly, I was cool with it. He was the man, and I figured, why not let him take the lead? Plus, it gave me the time and space to dive into my own passions and pursuits, especially when it came to feminist issues. Even though I really didn't enjoy doing chores and taking care of the house, I sucked it up because I preferred it over getting a job. I tried my best, even though most of the time I knew I was just doing the bare minimum. Luckily, my husband was a sweetheart and didn't really care how much work I did around the house. He always came home and helped me out with whatever I hadn't gotten around to doing. He was so understanding of my beliefs and everything else, and he was also super romantic. He loved taking care of me and was always the more giving one in our relationship. I guess that's why I got so used to him and believed that he'd never leave, and that he'd always be the one putting in all the effort. Honestly, now that I think about it, I realize that I took my husband for granted, disrespected him, and also used my feminist beliefs solely when it benefited me. Even though my husband was spontaneous, romantic, and amazing to me, I still felt that he was quite boring. He was a homebody and not a party animal like me. I thrived on the excitement of nightlife, while Eric preferred quiet evenings at home with a good book or a movie. Our differences in lifestyle started to create a rift between us, but I was too absorbed in my own world to notice how much it was affecting him. I loved the nightlife. I loved getting drunk, partying with my friends, and dancing until my feet hurt. It was a release for me, an escape from the routine of daily life. I hated that Eric wasn't like that. He didn't enjoy the loud music, the crowds, or the wild atmosphere of clubs. I believed that anything that happened while at a party or club was fair game. It was my way of asserting my independence and living life on my terms. Eric would often stay home while I went out with my friends. I felt like he was holding me back, so I would go out, drink too much, and let loose. I convinced myself that it was all harmless fun, that I was just blowing off steam and there was nothing wrong with that. My friends would always encourage me, saying I deserved to have fun and enjoy my life. They would cheer me on as I danced with strangers and flirted with guys who showed me attention. I started to resent Eric for not wanting to join me. I thought he was being unreasonable, boring, and overly cautious. I began to see him as someone who didn't understand me or my need for excitement. I felt justified in doing whatever I wanted because in my mind I was just living my truth and embracing my freedom. What I didn't realize was that my behavior was driving a wedge between us. Eric never complained about me going out, but I could see the hurt in his eyes when I came home late, smelling of alcohol and covered in glitter. He would try to talk to me about it, expressing his concerns, but I brushed him off, telling him he was overreacting and being controlling. I refused to see how my actions were affecting him and our marriage. Another annoying thing about me was that I believed whenever my husband didn't agree with whatever I said or wanted, then he was misogynistic or a hater of feminism. I always used that to attack him, bring him down, and as a chokehold on him. If Eric suggested that I should maybe take it easy with the partying or that we should spend more time together, I would accuse him of trying to control me. I would throw around terms like misogynist and anti-feminist to shut him down and make him feel guilty for having an opinion. I weaponized my beliefs to justify my actions and to silence any dissent from Eric. It was my way of maintaining control and avoiding any real accountability for my behavior. I never stopped to consider that maybe he had valid concerns or that he was genuinely hurt by my actions. I was too busy defending my right to do whatever I wanted to see how toxic and manipulative I had become. I was so caught up in my own world that I failed to see the cracks forming in our relationship. I was too busy chasing the thrill of the night to notice that the love and trust we once had were slipping away. And then one night, everything changed. That night, my friends had invited me out to the club. I really wanted to go, so I even had to cancel date night with Eric just to join them. He was shocked and protested, reminding me how much he had been looking forward to our time together. But I shut him down, accusing him of being misogynistic for not wanting me to spend time with my friends. I framed it as him trying to control me and my choices. Eric, not wanting to escalate the situation, reluctantly let it be. However, when he saw that I was wearing a red dress that was extremely revealing, he protested again. He thought the dress was too provocative and suggested I should change into something more modest. His concern was genuine, but I took it as another attempt to control me. I was furious that he wanted me to change and saw it as a misogynistic and clear power move. I didn't want to be controlled, and I wasn't going to let him dictate what I could or couldn't wear. I started to argue with him, insisting that the dress wasn't too revealing. I stood my ground, though in hindsight I realized the dress was way too much for a night out. It left little to the imagination and attracted a lot of attention, which I now understand was inappropriate for a married woman. But at that moment, all I could see was his attempt to control me, and I wasn't going to let that happen. I told Eric that I wouldn't change and that his request was very misogynistic. I accused him of trying to control my life, making him feel guilty for simply voicing his concern. Our argument intensified, with both of us raising our voices. Eric tried to reason with me, but I was too stubborn and angry to listen. I was determined to wear what I wanted, and I wasn't going to let him change my mind. My friends arrived to pick me up during our heated argument. They honked the horn, signaling for me to come out. Without another word to Eric, I grabbed my purse and stormed out of the house and just left him standing there. He looked defeated and worried. I got into the car with my friends. I felt a mix of triumph and anger. I had won the argument, but at what cost? I didn't care at that moment. All I wanted was to have a good time and forget about the fight. Even as we drove away, I glanced back at the house and just saw Eric standing by the door, watching me leave. There was a look of sadness and resignation on his face that I ignored. I convinced myself that I was in the right, that he was the one with the problem, not me. Little did I know this night would change everything. When I got back home, my husband wasn't there. I called him multiple times, but he wouldn't pick up. I even sent him a message, but there was no reply. Feeling a mix of frustration and worry, I decided to go to bed, hoping he would come home soon and we could sort things out. The next morning, Eric was back. However, he was unusually quiet and distant with me. I was surprised because usually whatever happened the night before wouldn't get to him by the next day. He had always been supportive, almost to a fault, and was generally okay with whatever I wanted to do. But this time, something was different. He went about doing the chores, all the while maintaining a cold, detached demeanor. I could sense that something was seriously wrong. Then out of the blue, he told me that we would be renewing our lease. I was shocked because we had been planning to go house hunting soon. Our lease was ending at the end of the year, and we had already discussed not renewing it. Now all of a sudden, he wanted to extend it. I was stunned and demanded an explanation. Eric told me that something had come up and we would have to postpone our plans to buy a house. He was vague and refused to give me any more details, no matter how much I interrogated him. I tried to force the information out of him, but he remained tight-lipped. Frustrated and confused, I eventually gave up, hoping he would open up later. Then he dropped another bombshell. He told me that I would need to get a job. I was taken aback and demanded to know why. Eric calmly explained that if I wanted to be a feminist and be independent, then I should get an actual job and contribute to the family. He said that I was abusing feminism and that my behavior the previous night was totally disrespectful and out of line. He went on to say that he would no longer be paying all the bills by himself. From now on, we would be splitting everything 50-50, including the household chores. He wanted to make it clear that he wasn't going to tolerate being taken for granted any longer. I was stunned by his sudden assertiveness. This was not the Eric I knew. He had always been so accommodating, so willing to support me in everything I did. But now he was standing his ground, and it was clear that he was serious. His words cut deep, and I realized that I had pushed him too far. Feeling a mix of guilt, anger, and confusion, I didn't know what to say. I had always prided myself on being strong and independent, but now I was being called out for my hypocrisy. Eric's ultimatum forced me to confront my own behavior and the way I had been treating him, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. I just sat there trying to process everything while Eric continued to go about his chores. His expression was unreadable. I felt a mixture of anger and confusion. How could he expect me to give up my freedom and independence? How could he not see that I was just expressing myself and having fun? I resented him for not understanding me, for not supporting me the way he used to. I started to see him as someone trying to control me, to clip my wings. I didn't see it as a wake-up call or a chance to make things right. Instead, I saw it as punishment for being myself, for being a feminist who refused to conform to his expectations. I grudgingly started looking for a job, but every application felt like a betrayal of who I was. I landed a job at a restaurant through one of Eric's connections, but I hated it. I felt superior to the staff, thinking they were beneath me. I was rude and dismissive, and I know now that I was wrong. I blamed Eric for everything, convinced that he was punishing me for being feminist. I couldn't see that he was trying to save our relationship, to make us equals in every sense. I was blinded by my own stubbornness and arrogance, and it cost me dearly. I wish I could say that I learned from my mistakes, that I saw the value in working and contributing to our household. But I didn't. I continued to resent Eric, to believe that he was the one at fault. I didn't realize until much later how wrong I was, and by then it was too late. As time went on, my resentment towards Eric grew. I saw every request he made as an attempt to control me. When he asked me to help with chores, I saw it as him trying to put me in my place. When he suggested we save money, I saw it as him restricting my freedom. Our arguments started to become more frequent and intense. I would lash out at him, accusing him of being a misogynist and a hypocrite. I couldn't see that he was just trying to create a fair partnership where we both contributed equally and respected each other's opinions. Even when Eric tried to talk to me calmly and explain his perspective, I would shut him down. I didn't want to hear it. I was too wrapped up in my own anger and resentment to see the damage I was causing to our relationship. Looking back now, I realize how toxic my mindset was. I was so focused on being right and defending my feminist beliefs that I forgot about the most important thing, our love and partnership. But at the time, I couldn't see past my own ego. I continued to resent Eric, convinced that he was the one at fault. It wasn't until much later that I understood the true meaning of equality in a relationship. And by then, it was too late to salvage what we had. I started seeking the validation and attention that I wasn't receiving from him outside our home. I convinced myself that it was just harmless fun, but deep down I knew it was a way for me to act out my frustration and resentment towards him. As time went on, my behavior became more and more disrespectful towards my husband. I would make snide comments, ignore him, and even belittle him in front of our friends. I felt a sense of power in being able to hurt him with my words and actions, but at the same time I knew deep down that I was only hurting myself and our relationship. I never told him about the flirting and dancing because I knew it would hurt him deeply. I justified my actions by telling myself that it was better for him not to know, but in reality, I was just too afraid to face the consequences of my actions. I didn't want to confront the truth of how far I had let our relationship deteriorate. And so I continued to subtly resent my husband and cause problems in our marriage, even though I knew I was in the wrong. What made it even worse was the fact that my friends didn't bother to check in on me during this tough time. Instead, one of them went behind my back and spilled the beans to my husband about my past flirting and dancing with other guys. It was a real punch to the gut. I couldn't believe that someone I trusted would betray me like that. It made me question everything, from my friendships to my own actions. My husband confronted me about it. He wasn't having that. In his eyes, that was cheating, and it was like that was the final straw. He kicked me out. When he asked me about it, at first I denied everything. I refused to take responsibility for my actions, and blamed him for not meeting my needs. Even though deep down, I knew that I was the one at fault for allowing our relationship to reach this point. He said he wanted a divorce and that he had been thinking about it for a while, and finding out about this had just reinforced what he felt. After my husband kicked me out, I was left feeling lost and hurt. Leaving our home was a wake-up call for me. I had to face the consequences of my behavior and take a hard look at myself. Returning to my parents' house after being kicked out by my husband was tough. I could see the disappointment in their eyes as they reluctantly let me back in. It was a harsh reminder of the consequences of my actions and the pain I had caused not only to my husband but also to those closest to me. Their disapproval was so painful, and that added to the already overwhelming shame and regret I was feeling. I knew I had let them down, and it was hard to accept. I felt like I had hit rock bottom with no one to turn to for support. I don't even know why I'm posting about my situation, but I guess I'm asking for help. I'm hoping for some guidance in this time of confusion. I feel lost. I don't even know where to start in putting my life back together. Update.
Hey, Reddit.
I didn't expect this kind of response. I got a lot of hate, but also a lot of useful comments. To answer some questions, first of all, my husband is adamant about divorcing me and has refused to budge no matter what my parents and I have said. He said I've disrespected him way too much and that I also cheated. He said he would never forgive me and to stop disturbing him. So yeah, I guess that's done for. I deserve it, I guess. I'm still at my parents' place, and yes, I was fired from my job. I was rude, never did anything, and was downright horrible. The only reason I wasn't fired long ago was because my husband knew the owner of the restaurant. But the moment he kicked me out, he also got me fired, so that's done with. And no, I never slept with anybody. Stop asking me that, Reddit. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I realized that I made a lot of mistakes. I was disrespectful to my husband, and I took him for granted. I was also lazy and didn't contribute to our relationship or our household. I'm not proud of the person I was, but I'm trying to change. I'm going to therapy, and I'm working on becoming a better person. I know it's going to take time, but I'm committed to making things right. I don't know if my husband will ever forgive me, but I hope he does. I love him, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. I'm not going to give up on myself or my marriage. I know I can change, and I'm going to prove it to everyone. Thank you for reading. Update. Hey Reddit, I'm writing to give an update on my situation. As you know, I've been going through a lot lately. My marriage is ending, and I've had to cut off contact with my friends. The comments and even the direct messages have been very horrible. I guess I should have expected it, but it still hurts. To answer a commonly asked question, yes, I cut off my friends. I had to. They ruined my marriage. I played a part in that, but they still played a significant role. They tried to reach out to me, but I ignored them and then blocked them shortly after. Things have been pretty slow for a while. I've been job searching, but I haven't really found anything. I'm trying to stay positive, but it's hard. I'm updating because you all are asking for an update. The divorce is in the works, so I'll probably update after that. I know this is a lot to take in. I appreciate your support, no matter how small. Update. Hey Reddit, it's me again with an update on my situation. I promised to keep you all posted after the divorce was finalized, and here I am. Unfortunately, the divorce proceedings didn't go as well as I had hoped. Despite having separate finances and no joint debt, I didn't receive any alimony or property from my ex-spouse. We didn't have any children, so child support wasn't an issue. The divorce was finalized quite quickly, but I wasn't completely satisfied with the outcome. However, I understand that I have no choice but to accept the decision. My parents were also disappointed, but we all agree that fighting it further would be a waste of money. The job search has been a major challenge. My portfolio is weak, and I'm struggling to find employment. This has put a strain on my relationship with my parents, who have been hinting that I need to start paying rent. I understand their frustration, but I don't have any income at the moment to do so. The resentment and disrespect I harbored towards my husband festered and grew over time, and it poisoned our relationship from within. Every harsh word I ever said in anger, every glance of contempt, only made things worse between us. I couldn't see past my own hurt and anger to truly understand what was happening to us. Our walls went up, communication broke down. We stopped listening to each other, stopped trying to understand each other's perspectives. Instead of working through our issues together, we allowed them to drive us further apart. I took for granted what we had. I failed to see the value in the person who stood by my side through thick and thin. I let my pride, ego, and my selfishness dictate my actions, never considering the consequences of my words and actions. And in the end, it cost me the love of my life. Now, looking back with regret and sorrow, I see clearly the mistakes I made. I wish I had the chance to go back and do things differently, to show my husband the love and respect he deserved. But it's too late now. To anyone reading this, learn from my mistakes. Don't let resentment and disrespect poison your relationship. Communicate openly and honestly, with love and compassion. Cherish the person you love, and never take them for granted. Because once they're gone, all you'll be left with is regret. Things seem bleak right now, but I'm trying to stay positive. I'm grateful for the support of my family and friends, and I know that I'll eventually find a job and get back on my feet. I'm not giving up on myself, and I'm determined to rebuild my life. Help. My boyfriend is after me, and I'm in hiding. I'm crying, and I'm scared to my fucking mind as I type this. He has threatened to report me to the police and expose everything to the internet. I did a terrible thing, and everything I've done has messed up my chances of getting out of this without repercussions from the law. And I know I shouldn't be jailed for what I've done. I came on here to confess it all and to know what exactly I have to do. I have no one to talk to or to advise me on the next step because I have made a series of mistakes, but it wasn't as if they didn't enjoy it. The people I did it to enjoyed it. They had no qualms about it until my boyfriend caught me and outed me. I need help. I'll tell you everything that led up to my life turning into a hot seat. My boyfriend had found my secret closet with DVDs. My color had drained out of me when I got back home and found him watching them. I had been sensing a bad break was coming between us, and I knew we were about to break up. We usually had a big argument prior to when a bad break was coming, and we had had a major argument before I came home and found him with his eyes wide staring at me from his laptop. What had we even argued about? What we always argued about. Money. My boyfriend wasn't giving me money and always said he wasn't responsible for me. This was someone that we lived together with. He only gave me money for groceries and the occasional gifts for birthdays and anniversaries, but aside from that, I received nothing else from him. Meanwhile, I had friends that their boyfriends gave them monthly allowance to take care of their hair, nails, and lashes. Mine insisted I work. We had been dating for over 2 years, and in that time we had broken up and come back together 3 times. And I had no idea what I saw in him, frankly. It was only the sex that had been good. So we had argued this time about how I should be pitching in according to him. The rent was crazy for only him to be paying, and he needed me to be pitching in for things since I was working. He had been like I shouldn't allow just him to be paying the bills. I needed to do something to prove that I loved him and the relationship wasn't a waste. How could he have said that? If I hadn't loved him, there was no way I would have stayed in the relationship with him. Well, that and the fact that I had nobody else on my side. I would get into my story somewhere in the middle of this, like I had read in other stories here. What he said led to a big argument because I wouldn't sit back and let him tell me how I had to prove my love to him by splitting the bills. None of the other bitches I called my friends did that, so why should I? I answered him exactly as you read above. He was infuriating, and I was sick of it. He told me that if I didn't want to stay with him, then I should get out of his house and never come back. I was leaving for work, so I had just given him the middle finger, hoping to get everything resolved in the evening when I got back. That didn't work out for me. I got back in the evening and my boyfriend was in my room with all my clothes on the bed and my suitcase open and my secret closet door opened with the DVDs I had placed there as backup of the second work I did. My boyfriend had just stared at me as a clip from one of my DVDs had been playing in the background, and he started asking me what they were. They were recorded scenes of me playing with my clients. I was a sex worker. Yes, feel free to judge me. After all, it had been my boyfriend that had told me to get a job, and I had gotten that. I didn't steal from anyone or kill anyone. I just did what I thought to be able to cater for myself since my boyfriend wasn't doing the needful. Back to the DVDs that my boyfriend had seen. I shared the videos with my clients with the promise to delete them, but I had kept some as backup in case. Those were the ones that my boyfriend had found. He started asking me questions and telling me I needed to be in jail for holding such materials. He started asking me who the men were and asking me when I had gone behind his back to see all these men. I couldn't even say anything or even talk because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where to begin. He had been the one that had pushed me to getting a job either way, so in my head I was like, why was I being judged by him? But I didn't voice any of the thoughts I had then aloud. My boyfriend had still been expecting an answer from me, but I ran. I ran away from the house because he began questioning me about the videos and I couldn't just deal. I booked into a hotel that night and my problems came in the morning where I started receiving threats from my boyfriend that he was going to submit all the DVDs to the police and hand me over to them. I needed a way to get out of my predicament. I needed to go and get all the DVDs back, or at least destroy them. So that was what I did. I destroyed them. I watched my boyfriend's house for about a week, noting his comings and goings, how long he stayed out when he left, and how often he went out. You may be wondering how I didn't know this before since he was my boyfriend, but I just realized I never really paid attention. He usually went out in the afternoons and stayed out till late, and on my lucky day when he had gone out, I snuck in. I still had my key of the place, and he hadn't yet changed the lock, so I got in easily. The DVDs were up to 20, and although I could have carried them all and walked away, I wanted to do something that would make him pay for finding me out. I don't know what came over me, I swear. I turned on the stove and turned off the fire alarm and left. I had stayed and watched from my car as the flames engulfed my boyfriend's apartment before the fire service came rolling down the street and trying to stop the fire before the whole building went down. I did a terrible thing, but I was glad that I had destroyed the evidence so my boyfriend had nothing against me. I thought I was free. Before you come for me, it was his fault. I shouldn't have done it, but it was his fault. He had promised that he would always look out for me, and all of a sudden he switched up on me. I had grown up in a very bad place, a place where everyone was on the lookout for themselves, and if you didn't ensure your survival, you were going to get left. I had been orphaned, so I was put in the foster system and sent to foster home upon foster home until I turned 18 and ventured out on my own. This was when I had first started out as a pole dancer in a strip club. I had kept it PG because I was still young, but I needed money to pay for rent and food, and on some nights the pay was good, and on some nights it was a struggle with the other strippers at the club. I had worked there for 2 years and had been moved up to stripper position. So I was getting money from the work. It was pitiful, my life. However, it had been okay money for me. I had gathered clients and I had loyal ones. I doubt any of you reading this would know how the strip club business was, but it had been tough. Then my boss told me they had to close down the business because he wanted to move out of the city and go somewhere else. I couldn't afford to go to another place and start over again, so I declined to follow him. Within a twinkle of an eye, I was put out of something that had given me a roof over my head and food on my table. In a year, the money I had saved up was gone. Rent had taken all the money and food, and I had to start looking for other means to survive. I had gotten into various trouble, and I had been caught shoplifting and had been about to be beaten black and blue when my boyfriend had saved me. I guess I don't have a right to call him my boyfriend anymore. I would use a fake name for him like I've seen others do when narrating their experiences on this platform. Jason. I'm not saying this to garner pity from you all, but I want you to know my backstory to make sense of my situation. The situation I had found myself in. Jason saved me from being beaten up by the security guys and then being sent to the police, and had offered to pay for the stuff I had wanted to shoplift. We had exchanged contacts that day, and he had asked me if I could meet him for coffee the next day. I had no idea what he had seen in me then. But he had been persistent, asking me how I was, if I was okay, what I did for work. He had even gotten me a cleaning position in his workplace and told me he could sponsor me to college. I would say nothing but the truth as I'm telling this my experience. Yes, Jason had put me through college for 3 years and had gotten me a job after I was done. This was before he then asked me to be his girlfriend. He made sure I finished schooling before he asked to properly date me. You never found that kind of man anywhere except in the heavens. I could have sold my soul to him because he had actually been good to me, but I'll admit that I have an extremely bad character, and things started falling apart after our first breakup during our short 2-year relationship. Like I said, he had gotten me a job in the company he had worked for, but 2 months into dating, Jason had said he wanted to start his own company, so he was leaving the firm where we had already been employed. I had asked if I could resign too, and he told me it was okay, that he could provide for us anyway while starting up his own company. He had even promised that he could take care of me, and the startup of the company won't be long and profit was guaranteed. 2 months later, things weren't easy and the money wasn't coming as it was meant to. This was when we had a big quarrel, and he had told me I needed to get a job to be able to take care of myself. Note, he had said taking care of myself because he didn't want to be giving me money for upkeep anymore. I told him that that wasn't what other people were doing in a relationship. He had promised to take care of me and he was going back on his word. So I had left him that first time and ventured out on my own and saw how tough the streets were, so I came back to him. This is my life. You don't have the right to tell me how to live it or judge how I lived it, so keep your opinions to yourself in the comments. I went back to Jason the second time and agreed to get a job this time. I got greedy, I'll admit. I saw my friends out there having what I was supposed to have, and I got jealous, and it was at this same time that my former boss from the strip club hit me up and said he was back and had some clientele if I was open for a job. Jason had wanted me to get a job, but I had the feeling he wouldn't appreciate what I was doing, so I took the job and applied for a position at a bakery as a cover-up. A leopard never changes its stripes, I guess. I had to make money to take care of myself, and everything was all coming back to me all at once. I accepted the job like 4 months after we had gotten back together, when things were really getting harder. I had promised myself that I wasn't going to do anything with the clients, that I was just going to dance on the pole. But 4 months into it, we had our second quarrel and got back together again, and something in my mind just changed, and I decided to start sleeping with other men for extra cash. Now that I think about it, I never really used the money to do anything but get material things. And if I could turn back the hands of time, I would, and go back to when my former boss had called me with the offer and said no. What had made me record the videos in the first place, you may be wondering. I wanted a failsafe. In case I ran out of money, I could use the recorded videos as a liability. My clients knew I was recording them. It had added to the appeal of me as a stripper. And sometimes they asked for the videos to relive the moment of pleasure they had gotten from me. However, they thought I deleted the videos after the whole escapade. I didn't. I had kept the videos to use to bribe their wives. That had been my retirement plan. I would tell Jason that I was going to see my friend for 3 days. My lie went along the lines of my friend was pregnant and needed all the help she could get. I usually scheduled a 3-day stay, and in that time I would make sure that my work schedule aligned to it. There had been no friend in honesty. I had made it up, and when he asked about knowing said friend, I would tell him that she was cranky and didn't like meeting people. I had told him she was one of my foster home friends and she was heavily pregnant. Jason hated, according to him, girly stuffs, and that included pregnancy, periods, and everything about the female anatomy. So it was easy to lie to him about those types of stuff. I lied to him about where said made-up friend lived and told him that it was in the criminal part of Brooklyn. He had worried for my safety, of course, but I had told him that he didn't need to worry about me. Jason is from the upper echelons of Brooklyn and hadn't been in the dredges of the city. He had been quite fascinated that I was an orphan. This was why I was berated that he didn't give me money, because I knew he had it, or at least his daddy had it, but it was like he was doing it to punish me or see if I would stick around. The guy had paid for my tuition through college. That was to tell you he wasn't no small funds. He had the money, but decided to venture out on his own, and then he had decided to start his own company when I had warned that it might not go as smooth as he might have thought out in his head. So I needed to venture out on my own from under the wings of my boyfriend. Anyway, I knew Jason was never going to come looking for me after I told him my friend's place was in the bad parts of the city. I had assured him of my safety, and he didn't bother with asking me about it anymore. It had been maddening at the beginning that he didn't care enough to bother about my whereabouts. But when I started making my money from my clients, I didn't bother anymore. At least I could do what I wanted without him disturbing me, and I could still keep my relationship with him. And everything was balanced until we had our third quarrel about how I should be paying for rent and other foodstuffs. That wasn't my job. He was the man of the house, even though we weren't married. He was the man. He was meant to be the provider while I took care of the house. After that had been what the Bible said regarding marriage. The man was supposed to provide, not tell the woman to go and work. It was at that point I knew he couldn't keep his promise to me, and it was time to leave the relationship. It was also the unfortunate time that he had found my DVDs and ruined everything that I had planned for. I had to burn the evidence because there was no way I was going to jail, and I wasn't going to sit back and watch it happen. I had placed the DVDs in his laptop close to the stove I had left on, so I knew they were going to be destroyed first. It never occurred to me that Jason would have backup, or there would be another whole thing at play until 2 weeks after I had set his apartment on fire. I have given you all the backstory of my entire life, and I admit I had not grown up right, and I had made some bad decisions, but it didn't warrant Jason's revenge on me. I had only wanted to make a living. I wanted to make it. I went the wrong way, and Jason found out that I was cheating on him and wanted to make me pay for it. That was why he was still calling me after I had burnt down his apartment. I had thought that it was all over, that he wouldn't try to look for me, but then 2 weeks after the whole issue, I was ambushed by Jason as I was leaving the bakery where I worked. Apparently, my setting fire to his apartment was a waste of time because he had copies of everything. He had known what I had been doing ever since he had evidence thrown in his face. One of my client's wives had found out that her husband had a video with me and had gone ahead and investigated, and somehow had linked it back to me and Jason. Jason's father hadn't been on good terms with me, so when the woman had come to him saying she had information on me, his father had decided it was time his son received some sense. I couldn't believe it. Jason had known way before he had found my DVD stash. In fact, he has been looking for it and hadn't randomly stumbled on it. He had asked me to start paying the rent so he could trace where my source of income was from instead of asking me outrightly so I wouldn't be suspicious of why he was asking. I had thought I was stealthy, but someone had found me out. Jason told me he had thought the woman had been bluffing, but he had followed me out one of the times I had said I was going to see my friend, and he had found out that there was no friend. It wasn't enough that I had cheated on him with so many guys, but he had set his apartment on fire too. He had a video of me leaving his apartment after leaving the stove on. Age had caught me on camera arranging things to set his house on fire, so he had ample evidence against me. This was where I got scared. He could call the police on me, and at that very moment I had nowhere to run to. But luckily he didn't call the police on me, but had told me to beware of his revenge. Silly me, I had taken his evidence lightly instead of as the serious warning it was, until I was kidnapped by the woman that had opened the investigation tab on me. Apparently I had dabbled in politics, lol. My stupid, unfortunate luck. One of the men I had had as my clients was, still is, a politician, and it was his wife that had found the video and seen me as a loophole to his political career that she needed to put out. She had told me herself when her men had picked me up from my workplace and carried me to an unknown place. The witch had looked smug when she was telling me that I was going to be gone in a blink of an eye. I didn't know things could get this bad. If you're wondering how I had escaped alive, she gave me 3 days to use and tidy up my ends if I had a family. Right now, I'm in hiding. Jason had showed up to my workplace with the FBI, but I had run away through the back when I had spotted them. This was when I had run into the woman, and she told me she was going to unalive me to tie up loose ends. I don't know what to do right now, and I'm currently hiding and typing this. I'm even using VPN so they wouldn't trace my location. Imagine the police and the rich after you. In case no one hears of an update from me, just know I've probably been unalived and my body has been dumped in the water. But if I've been arrested, I would definitely give an update before the court sentence in my arrest. I'm hoping I get out of the bind I have put myself in before the situation becomes worse or gets to any of the 2 options. If any of you knows of a way I could get a place to hide so everything dies down, or if anyone knows a place I can get a quick passport change and fly out of the country. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to a quiet place like the Sahara where no one would even think to look for me. Or if there's any other suggestions to get me out of my predicament, I would gladly take it, please. I really need your help, please. I know what I did was very wrong and I shouldn't have done it. I know I shouldn't have made the choices I made, but growing up I had no one on my side and no one to advise me. Now I'm stuck with the consequences of my actions and I think I'm going crazy. Help, please.